The Winter War was fought between Finland and the Soviet Union from November 1939 to March 1940. This well-known conflict of the Second World War saw Finland fight against the invasion of a far superior Soviet army. The war ended with a Soviet victory, however, Finland retained its sovereignty. This is an animated overview of the background, nature, and outcome of the war. Prior to the start of the World War II in Poland, the ideological enemies, Germany and the Soviet Union, had signed a non-aggression pact, much to the world's surprise. Both countries were seeking to expand their territories, and the pact also included a secret protocol which divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence between Germany and the Soviet Union, with Finland falling into the Soviet sphere. Invading Finland would enhance the Soviet power over the Baltic Sea, create a buffer zone to secure Leningrad against a potential German invasion, as well as threaten Hitler's iron supply from Sweden. Marking the start of the World War, Germany and the Soviet Union invaded Poland in September 1939. In October, the Soviets demanded Finland, with whom there was also a non-aggression pact, give up and demilitarize various areas on the border of the two countries. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, also bordering the Soviet Union, agreed to similar demands. The demands were rejected by the Finns, as were their counter-offers to the Soviet Union. In practice, this meant that a military conflict would follow, and Finland started to gradually mobilize its armed forces. To justify their invasion, the Soviet Union shelled the Soviet village of Mainila with artillery on the 26th of November, and claimed that Finland was behind the attack. This was further reinforced by a heavy anti-Finnish propaganda campaign in the Soviet media. After Poland, Stalin expected Finland to fall in no time at all. Hitler wouldn't intervene as they had agreed, nor would Sweden help Finland. On November 30, Stalin's forces attacked without a declaration of war. The invasion was not approved of by international media, and the Soviet Union was expelled from the League of Nations in December. This was of little help to the Finns, who were outnumbered in every aspect. The first battle saw the Finns retreat, unable and unequipped to combat the Soviet tanks. Using their resilience known as Sisu, the Finns were quickly able to push back in December. The Finns were fighting on their home ground and fiercely united against a common enemy. The winter was cold, with temperatures as low as -40, but the Finns were no strangers to operating in freezing conditions. Their use of skis made them highly mobile, and unlike the Soviet soldiers, they wore snow camouflage and had functional food supply. The borders of Finland where the fighting took place were dense forests and bogs, with very few roads which were crucial to the Soviet army's movement. The Finns took maximum advantage of this, using guerrilla tactics and chopping up the Soviet army into smaller chunks along the roads. This way, they didn't have to face the entire army at once, but could destroy parts of the enemy, often including their field kitchens, thus deteriorating the enemy's morale. This would later be known as the Motti tactic. The Soviet infantry would charge in wide rows which were easily mowed down with a few well-placed machine guns and snipers. Despite the lack of anti-tank weapons, the Finns learned to take down tanks at close range with petrol bombs known as Molotov cocktails, as well as jamming logs into the tank treads, immobilizing them. The massive losses, as well as the French and British intervention plans, forced Stalin to rethink his objectives at the turn of the year. The Soviet Union's February offensive on the Karelian Isthmus led to a breakthrough against the Finns, who were at that point lacking the numbers in both soldiers and ammunition. This ultimately forced Finland to agree to the Soviet peace terms and sign the Moscow Peace Treaty on the 12th of March 1940. 8% of Finland's territory was ceded, exceeding the Soviet pre-war demands. The Winter War left Finland depressed and hostile towards the Soviet Union, which would later lead to the Continuation War. 430,000 Finns were evacuated from the conquered areas. The war, with its heavy losses, was a humiliation for Stalin's military power. Stalin's purchase of the army had left a vast part of the competent commanders killed. The disaster in the Winter War likely convinced Hitler to attack the Soviet Union in 1941. Finland had fought a deadly civil war only 20 years earlier, and the nation was divided. The Winter War, however, united the nation against a foreign enemy. The phenomenon was named the Spirit of the Winter War and was key to defending against the Soviet invasion. The term is still used to this day. The Winter War was widely covered in the international media, and is still a well-known conflict in the Second World War. So well known that I often get comments referring to it in completely unrelated videos about Finnish mythology and history, which you can see on my channel. If you've enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments, as well as any other thoughts and prayers it may have brought to your mind. For more videos on Finnish mythology and history, check out my other videos or even consider subscribing to the channel.